Laura Blacklock is a journalist who has built her career on uncovering difficult truths. At the beginning of The Woman in Cabin 10, she is recovering from a traumatic experience connected to her previous investigative work, an inquiry that led to the death of a woman who had confided important and dangerous information to her. This immediately sets the tone of the film, the protagonist's emotional fragility and the central theme of seeking truth at personal cost. Laura receives an invitation to an exclusive luxury cruise organized by Anne Balmer, a wealthy woman suffering from cancer who intends to make an important announcement regarding her fortune. The event serves both as a celebration and as a publicity opportunity, attracting a select and extremely wealthy elite. Laura's presence is meant to provide favorable media coverage for Anne's charitable foundation, but it soon becomes clear that the voyage will turn into something much darker. Once aboard the yacht, Laura begins to notice a series of unsettling details. The other guests behave with an artificial charm that hides tension and secrets. The crew maintains an atmosphere of control and secrecy, and Laura senses that behind the glamorous facade of the journey lies something sinister. Her unease deepens when she accidentally encounters the woman staying in the cabin next to hers, Cabin 10, who appears nervous and evasive. During the night, Laura hears a loud noise and witnesses a tragedy. The woman from Cabin 10 is thrown overboard. She immediately reports what she saw, but the ship's staff insists that all passengers are accounted for and that Cabin 10 was never occupied. When the cabin is inspected, it is perfectly tidy, showing no trace of struggle or habitation. From that moment, Laura becomes both investigator and suspect, beginning to doubt her own perceptions while trying to prove that a crime has truly taken place. After reporting what she witnessed, Laura soon realizes that no one on board believes her. The security staff, crew, and guests insist that she must have imagined everything. They repeatedly emphasize that Cabin 10 is empty and that no one is missing. This immediate reaction begins a process of gaslighting, in which Laura's mental stability is progressively called into question. Despite this, Laura refuses to let the matter go. She begins searching for clues and stubbornly maintains her position. From the other guests, she receives only condescending remarks and invitations to enjoy the cruise. This social isolation mirrors the classic structure of a psychological thriller, in which the protagonist is trapped inside a system designed to erase the truth. Laura's investigation brings her into contact with key figures on board. Richard, Anne's husband, is the wealthy and authoritarian host whose charm conceals a ruthless nature. Ben, a photographer in Richard's employ and Laura's former partner, alternates between moments of concern and betrayal, first helping her, then reporting her suspicions to the crew. The ship's doctor, seemingly sympathetic, raises doubts about Laura's mental health, reinforcing the narrative that she is hallucinating. Laura is haunted by flashbacks of the woman she had once interviewed, who was later murdered after confiding sensitive information to her. These memories blend with the paranoia that haunts her in the present, leaving her uncertain whether she is truly uncovering a real conspiracy or merely reliving her guilt over the previous tragedy. The boundary between perception and reality becomes increasingly unstable, heightening both the suspense and the psychological tension. The viewer, too, is constantly led to wonder whether Laura is imagining everything or if there is indeed a real conspiracy unfolding aboard the yacht. However, the suspense does not last long, because a little past the halfway point of the film, it is revealed that the woman Laura met in Cabin 10 was not Anne Balmer, as she had initially believed, but another person, Carrie, a woman forced to impersonate Anne as part of a scheme orchestrated by Anne's husband, Richard. The real Anne had in fact died during the first night of the cruise. Richard's motive was simple greed. Anne intended to donate her entire fortune to charity, cutting him off financially, and he could not allow that to happen. Richard had organized the cruise as a staged event meant to publicize Anne's generosity while secretly planning her death. Carrie had been recruited to play Anne in public for the duration of the voyage, and to sign a will in Richard's favor during the closing charity ceremony scheduled at the end of the cruise. Carrie had agreed to participate in exchange for money, unaware of the true extent of the crime. The ending of The Woman in Cabin 10 functions as a symbolic resolution that goes beyond the surface mystery. Its central theme is the moral cost and power of truth in journalism. Laura's perseverance, despite being discredited and endangered, demonstrates the profession's capacity to expose corruption, even when personal risks are extreme. Early in the film, the protagonist mentions that a source from one of her previous investigations was killed after speaking to her, a reminder that telling the truth sometimes carries deadly consequences. By continuing to investigate Anne's disappearance, Laura fulfills her professional and ethical duty, even though it nearly leads to her destruction and almost costs her life. The narrative also explores the greed and moral decay of the elite. The passengers on the yacht are portrayed as individuals who use philanthropy and public image to mask their selfish motives. They have no genuine desire to do good and no real concern for the well-being of others, even those physically close to them. None of them care about Laura or what is truly happening on board. They simply label her as unstable and isolate her as someone beneath them. Anne's death exposes how profoundly these people lack empathy and morality. Her husband Richard kills her without remorse in order to maintain control over her fortune. The silence of the guests and the complicity of the ship's doctor emphasize the corrupting influence of privilege, showing how, in a closed system ruled by wealth, truth becomes dangerous and easily buried. The speech, written by Anne and handed to Laura near the end of the film, serves as a metaphor for the restoration of truth. Stepping onto the stage and delivering Anne's words, Laura symbolically reclaims the woman's voice and moral legacy, forcing the audience and the world to acknowledge the crime that was committed. That speech becomes a form of moral resurrection. Through this act, Laura transforms her role from victim and witness into an active bearer of truth. Another symbolic layer is represented by Carrie's survival and eventual freedom. In the end, Carrie survives and is reunited with her daughter. This unresolved moral note highlights the film's ambiguity regarding justice. Carrie is not punished for her deceit. Although the truth is revealed, not all those involved are held accountable. The film suggests that truth, once exposed, still carries a purifying power, even when the human justice system fails to fully restore balance. Finally, Richard's death is presented as poetic justice. His downfall exposes the emptiness of a life defined by wealth and manipulation. Richard values money over morality, control over compassion, and in the end, those very instincts destroy him. In the final scenes, the fate of each main character reflects their moral alignment within the story's framework of truth and deception. Laura Blacklock survives and publishes the article that exposes what truly happened aboard the yacht. Her professional credibility is restored when her account is proven accurate. The experience leaves her emotionally scarred, but strengthened in her purpose as a journalist. Laura embodies the story's central idea. Truth, though painful, is the only path to moral survival. She represents good triumphing over evil. Carrie, the woman forced to impersonate Anne, avoids prosecution and embraces her daughter once more. Her complicity in the deception is acknowledged but not punished, largely because her role is seen as coerced, and because Laura's reporting portrays her as a victim of exploitation rather than an accomplice. Reunited with her daughter, Carrie represents imperfect redemption. She once participated in wrongdoing, but ultimately chose the good, survived, and helped bring the truth to light. Richard Balmer, the antagonist and Anne's husband, is killed before he can escape justice. His death closes the cycle of manipulation and deceit that drives the plot. It also resolves the film's central tension about moral retribution, showing that wealth and influence may delay justice, but can never escape it forever. Anne Balmer, though already dead when most of the story unfolds, continues to exert moral influence. Her philanthropic intentions, donating her fortune to charity, are ultimately fulfilled posthumously. Her ideals outlive her husband's corruption, reinforcing the story's thematic contrast between greed and integrity. Then, Laura's former lover and fellow journalist serves as a cautionary subplot. His wavering loyalty, first betraying Laura to protect himself, then attempting to save her, illustrates the weakness of those who compromise truth for convenience. His actions add realism to the depiction of professional ethics under pressure. The ship's doctor and the other crew members fade into the background once the conspiracy collapses. Their earlier involvement in Richard's plan shows how institutional loyalty and self-preservation foster corruption. They stand as silent examples of how evil endures through collective complicity rather than individual malice. The narrative structure of The Woman in Cabin 10 begins with strong promise, but suffers from uneven execution. The initial tension is highly engaging, built on Laura's isolation and the ambiguity of her perceptions, creating the potential for a psychological thriller centered on paranoia and guilt. However, as the plot develops, the film drifts toward a more conventional and less mysterious formula, resolving its questions through straightforward revelations rather than genuine psychological depth. The result is a story that unfolds neatly, but at the cost of losing complexity, tension, and mystery. The pacing contributes to this inconsistency. The film alternates between long, dialogue-heavy investigative sequences and sudden bursts of action that feel disconnected from the tone previously established. Despite the relatively short runtime, the middle section becomes stagnant. Once the viewer realizes that the other passengers play no real role in the main plot, their characters and scenes lose significance, making the film feel longer and less engaging than it actually is. As for the performances, Keira Knightley's portrayal of Laura is solid but restrained. The actress successfully conveys the character's fragility and determination, but she is held back by a script that prioritizes exposition over character development. She is a talented actress working within a screenplay that, overall, feels rather weak. The film repeatedly tells the audience that Laura is traumatized and unstable, yet rarely explores that instability through acting or direction. Her moments of panic and emotional collapse appear mechanical, functional for the plot rather than transformative for the character. The supporting characters suffer from poor development. Richard embodies a cliché archetype, the charming yet predatory man whose wealth conceals violence and manipulation. His motivations are clear but lack nuance or depth. Ben's narrative arc is inconsistent. His betrayal, later remorse, and sudden heroism lack psychological foundation, reducing him to a mere plot device. The doctor and the other guests serve mainly as background figures, symbols of wealth and denial rather than autonomous individuals. They are heavily stereotyped, devoid of real personality, and seem to weaken the story rather than enrich it. Visually, the film benefits from its maritime setting and evocative cinematography, particularly in the Norwegian scenes. However, these aesthetic strengths do not compensate for the lack of narrative cohesion. The climax, though framed as a confrontation between truth and power, lacks suspense because the outcomes are predictable. The viewer foresees Richard's downfall and Laura's survival long before they occur, leaving little tension in the final act. Ultimately, the film ends without a real twist or moment of surprise. The Woman in Cabin 10 presents itself as a psychological mystery set in the isolation of a luxury cruise, yet it fails to sustain the tension or originality required by the genre. The premise, a journalist witnessing a possible murder and being manipulated into doubting her sanity, has strong narrative potential, but the execution reduces complex psychological themes to predictable plot mechanics. Once it is revealed that the supposed hallucination was in fact a real crime, the mystery resolves without emotional or intellectual impact. Thematically, the film attempts to address meaningful ideas such as journalistic integrity, the corrupting influence of wealth, and the moral cost of truth. However, these concepts remain superficial, serving more as background commentary than as forces that shape the character's inner conflicts. Laura's journey could have depicted the psychological breakdown of a woman haunted by guilt and doubt. But instead, the story opts for a straightforward investigation that ends exactly as expected. From a structural standpoint, the film's narrative is functional but uninspired. It follows a clear sequence: suspicion, denial, investigation, revelation, and justice, without ever subverting or enriching these stages. As a result, the story feels mechanical rather than organic. The audience watches events unfold rather than sharing the discovery alongside the protagonist. Keira Knightley's performance lends credibility to the film, but the script gives her little emotional range to work with. The supporting actors perform competently within the confines of their archetypes. The cinematography and production design are appealing, particularly the contrast between the yacht's cold, sterile luxury and the vastness of the sea. Yet the visual imagery rarely interacts with the story's psychological dimension. Ultimately, The Woman in Cabin 10 is technically competent but creatively flat. It offers a watchable yet forgettable thriller experience, not complex enough to challenge the viewer, nor dynamic enough to consistently entertain. Its most distinctive quality lies in its atmosphere, not in its storytelling. As casual viewing, it may serve as a pleasant diversion. As a mystery or psychological study, it leaves little lasting impression. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel to show your support. And if you'd like to keep going, here's another video from our channel that you might enjoy.